We are 38% through the 2-year budget at this point. Today what we're going to talk about is our 2015-16 budget. And we're required to do this mid-biennium review each midpoint of our 2-year biennium between August and the end of the year. So today we're going to review the budget, update the council with some estimates and forecasts, and then recommend any modifications that we see necessary. There is still a few things to do. Most of the heavy lifting's been done for the 2-year budget, but we do need to still approve a tax levy for 2016. So the process from here is to have a public hearing on November 9th, where we talk about some of our revenues and some of the impacts of some of the other taxing districts, like the hospital district and the library district will also be in there. And then on the 23rd, we're going to have an ordinance that sets that tax levy. So, let's talk about the general fund. At this point, we've received 41% of our revenues to date, which, as I mentioned before, is above that 38%, so that's good. We're above where we expected to be at this time of the year. What I want to talk about is 4 sources today that make up about half of our revenues, and we'll talk about those in a second. But there's also some others that are sneaking up here as well. Housing of prisoners has become a big revenue source. They're at about 6.2%. And then the other one is 7% of our general fund revenues now come from utility taxes on ourselves due to the tax increase that was imposed at the end of 2014. So if we look at property taxes, it's about 20% of our budget. We're 32% to date on receipts, which is about normal. We've got one more distribution in November to come. There is a large increase over 2014. And as you can see on the chart below, in 2013 there was a big dip, and that's the reason for that was a resetting of our levy when the library district was annexed out, and then at the same time a large devaluation came into place. So a big hit on 2013 as far as revenues where we were this point to date in 2013. We recovered some of that in 2014, and that's due to Imperium Renewables coming back onto the tax rolls and receiving that additional levy amount. And then in 2015 we've bounced back as well. But you can see this is one of the reasons why it's great to have a 2-year budget. We did have a big dip, but we're able to recover in 2014. And then in 2015 you can see that the increases that we had allowed us to access some additional capacity. So next, let's talk about B&O taxes. They make up about 9% of our budget. To date, we're at 31%, which isn't out of the ordinary. We're less than that 38%, but we've got one more distribution coming at the end of October. But this has decreased 6%, and this chart shows you what it looks like when a large employer closes down in your city. You can see it was very painful beginning in about 2010 when the paper mill closed down, and this scale is $200,000 as a drop. So it's a big number. We I believe we've hit the bottom in 2015, but again, this was not an easy loss to handle in the city budget. So B&O taxes, again, 9% of our budget, but you can see we've dropped rapidly into 2015. The next one is sales taxes, make up about 8% of our budget. We're 38% to budget today, right on target, and a 4% increase over 2014. And this chart shows, again, I think a much better picture of our economic activity in Hoquiam. We started out in 2009 and dropped and dropped and dropped, and I continue to tell our city administrator, I think we've hit the bottom. I think we've hit the bottom. I think we've hit the bottom. And in 2013, you can see we actually did hit the bottom. Bounced back in 2014 and then up again in 2015. So this is very encouraging from the city's standpoint. That looks like we've hit the bottom. And again, our economic activity in Hoquiam is beginning to pick up again. Electric utility taxes are the last of the major ones I'm going to talk about today. They make up about 8.6% of our general fund budget, and they're 34% to date, which is right on target. A little bit of a drop in 2015, but we had budgeted for that. You can see the up and down is again indicative of major power users, sawmills, paper mills, plywood mills. Again, when they have fluctuations, we see this at the utility tax level for sure. They're a major power user. 2014-15 is more of rate balancing at the PUD side, but again, I think we've stabilized this number as well and should see that to start to level off as well. As far as expenditures, I really can't say enough the great job our department heads do in balancing their budgets on an operational and managerial side. We're 41% spent to date, and I'll explain why that number's a little high, but these are the four largest budgets in our general fund. Police, 37.8% spent, right on target. Fire at 39% spent. And they're a little high only because the East Side Fire Station is in there. Short of that, they'd be right at 38% as well. Corrections, you can see, way under budget. And then community services far under budget as well. And they've got a large grant for the 9th Street Levee project that has not been spent yet. So short of that, that would be in the 38% range as well. So again, a fantastic job by these guys managing their departments. And one of the benchmarks we look at is public safety, to try to keep that less than 60% of our general fund budget. And if we were to lump all those in today, we'd be at about 50%. So a great job with that benchmark as well. There are three budgets that are over that I want to talk about. One of them, City Hall. It's a very small budget, but there were some repairs that we had to make to City Hall that bumped us over our budget for the where we should be this time of year. We do things like pay the utilities and we pay the insurance out of this budget, but it should be at 100% by the end of the biennium. Next is our public works budget. This one is 65.8% spent to date, and that's because we have spent money from a grant that we received to update our shoreline management plan. We have done that. We've been reimbursed for it, but we will need a supplement to get that. And again, you can see without that expenditure for that grant project, this budget would be at 32%, again, right on budget. And the last one is our IT budget. We've created this budget this year so we could centralize a lot of those IT purchases. We do all of our licenses through there, any antivirus updates, and then our firewall for any connectivity with the outside world. And then there's a couple capital projects which we've purchased this year that put us a little bit higher than we would normally expect at this time of year, but it should be at 100% by the end of the 2-year budget. So to summarize, our general fund revenues are within budget, our expenditures are within budget, and we're starting to put money back into reserves. We bumped up $211,000 from where we were to start the year already. And that's due to a number of things. We didn't give any raises in 2015, and we've had a number of open positions that we've not hired. And they include the animal control officer, our legal secretary, our city planner, and we waited until September to hire a police officer. So the last thing needing a supplement is our shorelines management plan. Some of the other funds I want to talk about today in our special revenue funds and utilities. Again, those funds don't have any new programs or any new staff, and they've got a number of open positions as well. The street fund is highly overspent, but also you can see the revenues have come in to support that, and that's due to the storm event in January that we've had to clean up from and repave roads. We've been supplemented already by that, and that one should be at 100% by the end of the biennium. Next is our ambulance fund. This one's a real tough one. They really only get 3 revenue sources in this fund, and none of the 3 are growing. And actually, even the billing amounts that we receive for ambulance runs are actually declining. So we needed an interfund loan at the end of 2013 to balance this fund. And again, this one's going to be a tough one. We haven't accessed any of the extra funds council put in from the general fund due to the utility tax increase, but we believe we'll need those at the end of the year to balance this fund, and staff will keep a close eye on this one. The last fund is the water, sewer, and storm fund. You can see it's a little bit overspent, but also the revenue's there to support it, and that's due to the transmission main project that was just finished earlier this year. And again, that project should be, that project is complete, and this fund should be at 100% by the end of the biennium. So to summarize, we look good 9 months into our 24-month budget. We have a number of open positions, some reductions, and no staff salary increases that have helped us get into a good position. We're going to need a supplement for that grant to, we'll need a supplement for the Shoreline Master Plan grant, but as far as the storm cleanup, that grant has fully paid for that. And again, ambulance is going to be close. We'll keep the council updated on that. So next, we're waiting for our property tax amounts to come in from the assessor. And again, there's some new things on that levy this year. The hospital district shows up on there, and depending on where they assess their levy at, I've heard 25 cents, but if it's up to 50 cents, it could be an issue for the city of Hoquiam. Inflation's less than 1%. That's it doesn't really concern us as far as our levy amount, but it does affect some of our water and sewer rates, and we will approve our tax levy in November depending on what those other levies do. The crew consolidation we hope to implement at the end of this year. We've got a retirement in our sewer department, and giving us a real good opportunity to put those crews together and see if we can gain some efficiencies. And lastly, we are going to try to fill a few positions by the end of the year. We're hiring 1 maintenance worker. The animal control officer should be out on the street by then. A utility billing clerk, and then lastly a legal secretary. That's it. Again, please give me a email or a call if you have any questions. I'd be glad to help you with anything that you have.